Well, I thought we were live. There we are. We are live on YouTube. Well, it says we are. Might be a little delayed there, hitting the air. Not sure why, but we are there. So join us as we simulcast everywhere. Looks like YouTube is just a little bit behind today for whatever reason. Lots of ways to get a hold of us, and we hope you'll interact. Of course, if you're listening to the podcast, you're watching the show on demand or whatever the case may be, thanks for doing that as well. We certainly appreciate that. Because that's another way you can certainly interact with us, because not everybody can watch the show live, and we certainly can appreciate that. There you go. Any questions? Good. I think we're done then. Lots of great basketball we'll talk about in a moment. Got a few headlines to get to. First and foremost, still trying to keep a track on things in Albion and Concordia, Chicago. To name a few, we haven't gotten any updates other than what we talked about on Monday's show out of either of them. We certainly continue to look for them and reach out to individuals, though no news is there. We'll keep an eye on those situations as they warrant, and we'll see where it takes us as a result. NCAA convention has started. We'll get to that in just a moment. Few items to expand upon what we talked about on Monday. Quick news out of Bethel. Women's basketball coach John Herbrechtsmeyer has announced that he is stepping down for the season, just for the season, due to health issues. He apparently has had some kind of surgery. Does not go into detail on their website. Whether they should or shouldn't is irrelevant. It's sometimes some do, some don't. But he has stepped down for the rest of the season. Scott Longinger, I hope I said his last name right, will step up as interim head coach while their assistants will take on some more responsibilities. But we wish our best to John. A good man, Bethel, a good program, and we hope nothing but the best there. Reminds me, we didn't mention on Monday that Mike McGrath at U Chicago men's basketball is doing the same. Mike's a dear friend of the show, dear friend of mine. Talked to him a bit, including earlier this week. I even got to see him earlier this week. He looks good, just dealing with some lingering issues from the past year that need his attention, so unable to stay with the team. I think he was hoping to push it to the end of the season, be able to handle it all at the end of the year, but that's not for the cards, as it were. And so he is out through the season. His assistant took over at U Chicago. Which is bugging McGrath quite a bit. He'd rather be coaching, but nonetheless, still involved. And certainly we wish him the best in his recovery from all of that as well. No coaching changes that we're aware of, other than those two temporary ones. Guests coming up on today's show. We jammed it packed full of top 25 interviews. We were going to do a women's top 25 panel, but honestly, we had a couple challenges with that. One, not everybody's available on an afternoon, not surprisingly. Two, we got to expand our panel, so we're looking to do that as well. Not sure when we're going to do it. I don't want to wait till next Thursday, but it might have to. We'll see maybe about sliding it in on Monday, Martin Luther King Day. We'll see. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But we'll get to the top 25 panel on the women's side soon enough. What was it? Guests. So that's why, and I don't have an evergreen interview today. We're still working on kind of setting those up and getting those ready. Some of them have to be pre-recorded and whatnot due to people's schedules. So we'll get to those as well. Also worked on a bunch of ideas that we want to talk about. We want to talk about the Basketball Hall of Fame, for example, and D3 representation. We want to talk about numbers being down in women's basketball, officiating, and the lack of officials and really behavior towards officials. We want to talk about that and some other things. So we got a lot of ideas on the back burners that we're going to start bringing to the forefront, and we look forward to start doing that as soon as possible. Guests, as a result, today, we will go out to the West Coast to start things off. They're having brunch out there, or maybe a late breakfast. We'll talk to number 19 Puget Sound women's basketball about their great start to the season. What is an interesting Northwest Conference race, maybe a little bit different than everybody is used to. We'll head back to Ohio, talk to Mount Union men's basketball. They just had a big game against Marietta last night, one of many big games on the men's side last night. We'll talk to their head coach about the Purple Raiders and at the same time talk about their former sports information director, Lenny Wright, who passed late right about the time school was getting started. Then we'll head and talk to St. Thomas, but not that one. We are so used to talking to the Purple St. Thomases up in Minnesota. Of course, they're in D1. We have not talked to them since the summer of 2021 when they was basically officially heading off to D1. We will talk to the Texas version, the Celts. And they're off to a great start this season, finally eligible for the NCAA convention. Their head coach on the men's side will join us to talk about their national ranking at 17. And then number 6, Scranton women's basketball will join us. Their head coach, Ben O'Brien, will be with us. Last time, by the way, the NCAA convention was in San Antonio, was the first year under a new head coach at Scranton as well, but that was also 2 cycles ago. Tara Woodruff was the head coach at that point. We've already gone through a few since then. But we'll talk to Ben O'Brien about taking over the Royals program and how they're doing so far. It looks like they haven't missed a beat as they are 13-0 so far this season. Eric says, thanks for simulcasting on YouTube. Great matchups coming up. Well, we're glad you can watch us on YouTube. You can watch us on Facebook Live. You can also watch us on our main channel, thanks to Blue Frame Technology and their streaming partners. You can watch us on the big screen, whether it's on Amazon Fire or maybe you're watching us on the Apple TV app or Roku or wherever you can get the Team One Sports app. You can watch us on the big screen, and I apologize now, I did not put on any makeup for the lighting today. We're doing a midday show because I've got basketball games to broadcast later tonight, and I need to work. So we are doing the show earlier. This will happen at least one more time in a couple of weeks here, because the Centennial Conference likes to play games on Thursdays, primarily. We can debate about that. I don't like their conference scheduling, but if I got my druthers, we'd probably have more Thursday games, which means we'd have to adjust Hoopsville nonetheless. But anyway, my point being is we'll have another afternoon matinee show coming up in a couple of weeks, and I think a couple of weeks after that is the marathon. So we're going to have a weird couple of Thursdays here until we get to February and after the marathon before we settle into our normal 7 o'clock routine. Of course, we're normally on the air at 7 o'clock Eastern time every single show, Monday and Thursday. Don't forget, though, end of February, we'll have our special Sunday show where we do all our selecting and mock bracketing and all that fun stuff. There's a lot to get involved with that, by the way. I know there's a lot of Pool C conversations. If you're coming here for Pool C conversations, I'll tell you now, we don't put our toes in the water on that on this show until much later in January and really towards the marathon period of time, because there just isn't enough data. And it's getting in the weeds for me where I need to not focus there right now. We just want to focus on teams and conference races. So that's kind of where that goes. As far as big matchups and big battles, last night, a good one between Randolph-Macon and Christopher Newport in men's basketball action. That one taking place in Ashland, Virginia. Enjoyed watching that on the big screen, thanks to the web stream from Randolph-Macon. And the Yellow Jackets continue to win at home. I believe it's 57 straight now that they've won at their home gymnasium as number 2 took on number 5 there. Christopher Newport actually led at halftime, led for a good chunk of the beginning of the second half before, and looked like they were succeeding pretty well against Randolph-Macon's defense, but some great adjustments by Macon, especially defensively, and then they found themselves offensively a little bit in that second half. Ended up shooting, I think it was 16 of 20 from the floor. Came storming back, maybe from 7 down. I think it was a 12-point swing ultimately, thanks to a late second three-pointer. Great game. According to the fans, great atmosphere. It was interesting. Christopher Newport, radio broadcaster, saying the best Division III atmosphere he's ever seen. No disrespect. I'll talk about the greatest atmosphere I've been at. I love games in Ashland, don't get me wrong, but the best atmosphere was somewhere else. But to be honest with you, unless you're involved with those two teams, you're not going to realize that. Anyway, great game. Mallory had basically a 5-point swing himself for Randolph-Macon with under a minute left, blocked a shot that was a layup inside, pinned it against the backboard, came down the other end. They called timeout, did Randolph-Macon. Out of the timeout, they ran a play. Mallory was sitting wide open at the top of the key and buried a three-pointer. So a 5-point swing on his alone basically iced the game for the Yellow Jackets. That's a big win. I am not voting Randolph-Macon that high. Everybody's got them to the point where they're number 2. I've got them in, well, I moved them up to 5 prior to this week, or into this week's top 25. They had been sitting in the 5 to 10 slot for a number of weeks. I think they finally found themselves, or most of themselves, for the post-Puzz Anthony era from what I watched last night. I think the beginning of the season, no surprise, they struggled to find themselves, figure out who would be running what or dictating how or however it was. Because Buzz Anthony was, the joke was that he was, not the joke, the comment was he was another coach on the floor, but he really was. And how he ran the offense, understand the offense, how he helped run the defense, how he understand the defense, how he interact with opponents, how he interact with his teammates, how he interact with the officials was a huge factor of how good Randolph-Macon had become. And they needed to find themselves a little bit and find out who was going to take more of the mantle in whether it was defense or scoring or leadership or whatever. And so not surprisingly, it took a little while. Didn't have a great game against Mary Washington. Didn't have a great game ahead of that. But something's clicked. Not surprisingly, a Josh Merkel team has clicked. Because remember, you don't play unless you know their defense, not their offense. And now they're playing really well. I'm definitely going to be comfortable moving them up. Christopher Newport, I had sitting 3 slots behind him in the first place, so the outcome is about what I expected. Christopher Newport's a darn good squad. I think everybody's a really good squad. There's just nobody great. But Randolph-Macon has certainly found themselves, so hats off to them. Other games, again, Mount Union surviving against Marietta. That was a great game shown on local television, which was great for them. And then WPI, lacrosse, Calvin getting a huge win over Hope in the rivalry. Absolutely dominated in that game. I was really impressed. Did not watch a ton of it because it was a blowout from the moment the ball went up. So no disrespect. I just didn't catch a lot of it. The game was played at Hope. They apparently have a brand new scoreboard at DeFoss Fieldhouse, and apparently Calvin decided to use and abuse it. 81-49 the finish there. Just mind-blowing to say the least. So congratulations to the not the Dutchmen. No, of course not. The Knights for that big win. That's the rivalry. That's the D3 atmosphere that I think rivals no one. That going to the 100th episode of Hope versus Calvin, which was at Hope. Pat and I went to that one. That was another atmosphere. That's just on another level. And I know there's great rivalries around Division III. I know there's great environments around Division III, and I'm looking forward to getting to more of them. But Hope Calvin 100th at Hope, granted not the bigger of the two gyms, the biggest is at Calvin. That is the best Division III atmosphere I've ever been to. And congratulations to Calvin on that win. St. Olaf defeated Carleton to end a 7-day winning streak for Calvin. There's some great games that have taken place. Back on Tuesday, there were some good games. Swarthmore Johns Hopkins men's basketball faced off again. SWAT getting the win in that one. I'll see Hopkins tonight. I'm interested to see how they respond to that against a McDaniel squad that I thought was playing well, but has not been playing well. They got absolutely blown out in their last few games. I'm looking forward to seeing them. I saw Muhlenberg lose to Gettysburg, and I finally saw Gettysburg playing the way I expected them to play this season. We'll see if it's an aberration, but they beat the Mules. Muhlenberg's good. They're not great. They're not a top 25 team. They've got the right pieces. They can certainly ruin someone's day and be competitive. But there's also a few pieces that are shooting themselves in the foot, and I think they're still trying to figure that all out. I'm not a coach by any stretch of the imagination, but it's been interesting. In the meantime, Franklin and Marshall tripped themselves up against Washington College, so all the love we gave with the Diplomats, that was at home in Lancaster, not in Chestertown. All the love we were giving the Diplomats is now certainly a head-scratcher. I think they're a really good team, but they shouldn't be losing to Washington at home. And plenty of other scores around. In the women's side, not a ton, other than Ohio Northern beating Baldwin Wallace, which was a big upset, at least in the rankings, 18-7. But not surprisingly, once again, women kind of holding their own. The one thing we have not talked about, we'll dive in about it at a later date a little bit more, is Amherst women lost their first ever game at the D3Hoops.com Classic, which is saying a lot since they've been there 5 or 6 times. But they've stumbled a couple times since then, too. So they're just not the program we're used to. Tufts has stumbled a bit as well. And NESCAC's wide open on the women's side, and I think that's going to be fascinating to watch. there's so much more to talk about. And we also have the NCAA convention. We will wrap up our show with a little bit about what's going on in the convention, because there is some interesting votes that we didn't broach on Friday's show. There's actually two items, or I should say 4, but 2 different things that they will do that special vote for that we talked about on Monday's show. So we'll dive more into that at the end of the show. As always, we got to get going and get to guests, but if you got questions for us, you can tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. You can email us, hoopsville at D3sports.com. You can join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville, etc. Wags, what are you talking about with her sinus? And yes, I'm not forgetting about the Palestra Day of the Landmark, Wags. That's why we got Scranton on the show, sir. We will be talking about the Landmark Conference at the Palestra on Sunday. Something I wish I could go to, but to be honest, I will not be there. Yeah, Matt Snyder. I like the numbers on the new scoreboard that put up on the Calvin side. Yeah. Yes, and that was another Calvin win at Hope. You're right, sir. Just chatting with the guys who are interacting with us already. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Puget Sound, they've gotten up early to join us, talk about their basketball team. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA and ABC studios. Plenty more Hoopsville ahead as we dive in to this matinee.
These are your teams, your players, your community of fans. This is where they play, where they practice, where you cheer. At every meet, every event, every game. Your community is passionate, dedicated, supportive. You know the tension of a close game and the thrill of the win. So while you're cheering, keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary. If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
It starts right when you hit the court. You imagine your finest moment. The game-winning shot that gets you to the dance. A monster dunk or no-look pass, and cutting down the net. Sports lets us dream of our own success and prepare us for our finest moments on and off the court.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
In any way that we can.
To get a friend home safe.
To never blame the victim.
It's on us.
To stand up.
To make our community safe for all.
It's on us.
It's on us to look out for each other at parties.
It's on us.
To be more than just a bystander.
To step up and say something.
It's on us. All of us.
To stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody, as we continue to roll along on this matinee Thursday. If you've got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. You can join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Hoopsville. You can also email us, hoopsville at D3sports.com. We're also simulcasting on YouTube, youtube.com, I think /D3Hoopsville or /Hoopsville. But to be honest, we've lost track of that one. I know it's there. Not that we lost track of the account. We just lost track of what the shortcut is. All right, so we're going to head out to the West Coast to start this show, this matinee, where they're having a little late breakfast or brunch with a cup of coffee. We're still working on our somewhat chill coffee. Speaking of which, actually, I just realized I've got a Portland, Oregon mug here. It is Voodoo Donuts. I just happened to grab that this morning. If you're curious, the magic's in the hole, and yeah, there's a hole in the mug. Love this one so much. I already bought another one to replace it because I thought this one was wearing out, and I still haven't gotten rid of it. So I've got another one back up just in case. Voodoo, what I'm trying to tell you is call us. Call us. We'd love to have you sponsored on the show. Anyway, wasted enough time. Puget Sound women's basketball having a tremendous time in what I would say is a very different looking Northwest Conference, at least at this point. Puget Sound, Pacific Lutheran, some others are certainly grabbing some attentions. We're so used to Whitman or others being on the top. And we've talked back in 2019 to Puget Sound when they seemed to be emerging. And I think the COVID things kind of slowed things down. So it's good to get them back on the show. Joining us is Coach Kushiyama, the head coach of the Puget Sound women's basketball team. Coach, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. First and foremost, give us a sense of what's going on. You guys have your 11-2 start. You're at the top of the early start of conference play. You got to be confident with what you're doing. Is this what you expected?
Yeah, I would say it's absolutely what we expected. We're so caught up in what we're doing on an everyday basis. We honestly, I don't know about my team, I should say, but I know for myself, I don't even look at what our record is. I have a hard time just keeping track, and people ask me, I have no idea, to be honest. So, and I don't know if that's because we're just so focused on what we're doing every day, or I don't care. I just kind of focus on coaching up my kids and having fun every day.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that to some degree. I can certainly understand not wanting to get caught up in all of the minutia sometimes. You got to, especially coming out of the holiday break, because the real important thing is you want to make sure you're back to where you were or what you thought was doing well before the break. How tough is that sometimes to come back and still be clicking on the cylinders you want to be clicking on?
Oh man, that's so hard. And then you throw in a little bit of that Southwest stuff that was happening, and how that affects us getting back to the Northwest, or just our kids coming back from break. There's just so many things, just life, that happens to them, and that it kind of puts things into perspective. And so, when the kids get back, or when I get back to campus, you're just grateful to be back, period. And so then you get to think about basketball at second.
Yeah, good point about travel. I totally forgot how challenging that was, even for the likes of you guys. And luckily, you don't have to do any air flights for conference play, but you still have some long hauls.
For sure.
Where do you have the longest trip still ahead of you?
Yeah, so that'll be in 2 weeks from now when we travel east to Whitman or Whitworth. It's like 5 hours in either direction, and then 3 hours in between them. So it's a nice hefty. We watch a lot of movies and team bonding.
Yeah, fair. Hey, let's back up a little bit. You did start the season with 2 games not in Division III against Warner Pacific and Multnomah. I might have said that wrong. I know it's named after the falls, and I've never said that right. And then you got things going at home in conference play or non-conference play. Interestingly enough, Wheaton, Illinois came out to play you guys. You got Chapman to come up. Whittier came up to play. Then you got into conference play, and you did take on the Wits. Unfortunately, that was the home games. And not the away games to get them out of the way earlier. Then you ended up playing Redlands, Coast Guard, Mary Hardin Baylor, Trinity, Texas, and you went out to Texas. So again, as you said, the travel was certainly part of it. How did you feel that start was? You had one loss. It was to Wheaton. Your next loss was a darn good Trinity, Texas squad. How do you feel things have gone?
I loved it. After last year, I just knew we needed to beef up our schedule, and we needed to challenge our group. We had such a young core of our team, as we've kind of come out of COVID, and so I just knew this year, we needed to test the kids and really just strengthen our schedule. Cam's down at Trinity is doing a great job. I appreciate him helping us out and working with us and getting that scheduled. And that was a tough stretch for us too. I mean, 4 games in 6 days, plus the travel out to Texas. But I mean, it was great. I just wanted to come out of it, honestly, just seeing where we were with things. I mean, because the core group of this team has never played a team outside of our region. And so, with COVID, that COVID year, we only played the teams in Washington.
Right.
And so then last year was portion of the season, and so we just really wanted to travel and see where we were with things. And so, yeah, I was very pleased with the way that we played. Marymount and Baylor was a tough team, and then obviously Trinity, Cam's got that team rolling, and so, you know, it's just nice to get out there and compete.
Of course, again, obviously good to get some of those well, now it's in-region games against the Texas schools. So it's good to get some comparable games when it comes to regional rankings and all that other stuff that goes with it. Again, a game against Wheaton, you get a little bit of cross-pollination there. That helps out. But really what's important, we always know, it's a Northwest Conference race. You're off to a 4-0 start. You've got wins over both Wits. You've got wins over George Fox and Willamette. That's a pretty good start because usually this Northwest Conference, it's about George Fox. It's about Whitman. Now you've got those two already in your back pocket.
Yeah, you just never know. Because, you know, the conference, there's so many good coaches, and so anytime you go on the road, you never know what's going to happen. So, yeah, we're grateful for every win that we get. And I just got a ton of respect for all the coaches in our league. So, I mean, yeah, we're feeling good about where we're at, but we also know, I mean, we got Pacific that's coming up, and
yeah,
they're having a great year. You know, and then we still got the whole second round. So, thankful to get a couple of these road games out of the way when, you know, we're on holiday break right now, and, you know, so when the students get back, we got a bunch of home games, so we're looking forward to, you know, playing in front of our home crowd again.
Now, earlier I said Pacific Lutheran. Total. I meant just to stop at Pacific. I did not mean to add the Lutheran part of that. Pacific Lutheran is 0-13 right now, 0-4 in conference play. Pacific's the one you're tied with, 11-2, 4-0 in conference action. And that is your next game. It's coming up at their place tomorrow. And then the game after that's your alma mater, Linfield. So this is kind of an important weekend in the sense of you come out of this with 2 more wins. You're 6-0. You've got a game lead at best, or I should say at least, over your everybody else as you start to look towards the turn into the rest of the conference and the double round. Does that put more pressure on this weekend? Does that put more emphasis on this weekend?
I mean, I don't know. I just think it's because of the culture we've created. We don't look at any opponent that's, you know, like a bigger game or a lesser game. We know that we can either beat or lose to anybody, and so we just kind of focus on who's in front of us at this point in time. And yeah, I mean, we played against Pacific many times. We met them in the conference tournament last year. And again, we just know that if we focus on ourselves, everything will kind of take care of itself from there.
Sure. No, that totally makes sense. But what do you expect from Pacific? Like what is it you're talking with your team about to know, and at least that's the first one, to be honest, so you're not technically overlooking Linfield, though they're on the second side, that the trap game can work both ways. But what is it about Pacific that you're anticipating, that you're talking with your team about, that you think is going to be key in that game?
Again, I just think we just need to take care of ourselves. You know, the games that we struggle in, it's when we aren't playing to our standards or aren't playing as hard as we need to. You know, and so like I think Pacific's a very well coached team. They're very disciplined. They have, you know, the second leading scorer in the league. They got a lot of things that they can do to beat us. But again, I just think if we focus on ourselves, you know, win or lose, it'll work out the way it's supposed to.
Let's talk about this squad. You talk about a team that obviously going through COVID didn't have as much experience. 19-6 in the 2018-19 season, fell off during the 19-20, and then obviously COVID hit, and then it became interesting. Only 2 seniors listed on this team. Eligibility is a trick there because those 2 seniors are juniors in terms of eligibility. Whether they come back or not is obviously the million-dollar question and will be for some years to come. But it's not necessarily their show. They're not your leading scorers. It's players like Kennedy Brown and Sophia Nilsson who are double digits. Talk a little bit about that leadership / where all the real kind of players are in terms of eligibility and experience.
$1 million question.
Yeah.
Whether those kids come back. I would love for all of them to come back. Yeah, we're just kind of spread all over the place in terms of our leadership. So, and even in regards to our scoring, or we don't rely on any one person for anything. And even especially with our leadership, I give the kids so much freedom and autonomy to do things. If you like really watch this closely, they're doing a lot of the talking, either it's on the court or even during timeouts. They just have such a great understanding of everything that we're trying to accomplish as a group. I think a big part of that came from our COVID year, is that we were just able to communicate and grow as a group outside of the court, that we're on the court together. They just already know what I'm thinking so much that I can kind of just step back and let them kind of do their thing. Maybe give them my perspective on a couple of things or what I'm seeing, but it could be anybody that leads us in scoring on any given night, or leads us in steals, or leads us in reboundings. They just have such a selfless group that it's a pleasure to coach them. It's a joy for me to coach them every single day at practice. And I just know, like, if someone does go down, say with an injury, like we've been plagued with injuries in the past, we don't skip a beat really, because of the way that we play, and because of the way that everyone has an ownership piece to everything that we're doing. I don't know. I really love this group, and yeah, like I said, with those seniors that could graduate, I would love for them to stick around and be with us once again.
We're realizing now your audio's been a little low to those who are listening in. We apologize. We're going to do a temporary fix here. Something got changed in our settings, but nonetheless, we'll get through it. Appreciate those who reached out to let us know. You can still hear you, just it's a little lower than it should be. You talk about, by the way, I misspoke. There's 3 seniors with junior eligibility. What's it about the team that you guys are doing really well? I noticed you're outscoring your opponents by about 14 per game right now. So is this a defensive game that's leading into the offense, or is it just you've got such a good offense right now that teams aren't able to keep up?
I'd like to say it's our defense.
Sure.
I emphasize a lot of our defense. A lot of the things that we do offensively, I think, come as a result of our defense. I really emphasize our defense and our hustle and effort, which bleeds into our offense. I think there's a lot of autonomy there that, because I'm so demanding on the defensive end, that there is more of a freedom and leash on the offensive end for our kids. I also want to shout out my 2 assistant coaches, because they do an amazing job, and I think the things that they do are a reason why we're so successful. Like Jolene LeMay, she does so much effort in terms of helping us with our culture and our awards, and that really, really helps a lot of that selflessness on our defensive end. And then my former player, who's now assistant, Elizabeth Pruitt, she does so much of our individual development with a lot of our players, and it's amazing to see how much we've improved with our shooting. I think that's a direct result of her work with each of our players on and off the court.
I mean, you're shooting 40%, 41% from the floor, though giving up the same amount defensively. You're shooting 34% from beyond the arc, 71% from the free throw line. Those are solid numbers. Defensively, interesting, the numbers are about equal, so I can see where your comment comes from. But those shooting numbers, I'm not seeing around the league necessarily, or around the nation, because I'm at games sometimes going, man, I'd love to see 35% right now for a game. It's amazing. Those numbers stand out to me, and I would say, 5 years ago, those numbers would probably be what you would have expected as a baseline.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. And so, I think when you're looking at it, just really depends on which statistic you're looking at, right? I mean, because when you're looking at the turnovers that we're forcing, that leads itself into, high shooting numbers, because we're getting probably layups or wide open threes in transition. So I think the 2 go hand in hand. And I would love for our efficiency in the half court to improve. But again, that's always something that we can that we can improve on.
Yeah, I get that. Curious, looking at how this plays out. Is there something about the team that the stats, or player, I should say, that the stats don't give us everything about it? Like, that's a key. She just doesn't rack it up in the stat sheet.
Oh, I think that's the beauty of our team is, that we have so many good players that just shine in their own way. I do think, Katie Minahan, she was recognized, and so she was a first team all conference, so it's hard for me to say she's not being recognized, but, averaging over 4 steals a game, she had 12 steals in one game, and then she had a triple-double in one game, so she's not someone that I think gets recognized, within our conference as terms of like player of the week, because she just doesn't have the offensive numbers. Although she put up 16 in our last game, she's just not someone that's always going to lead us in scoring. But man, she is unbelievable. The instincts that kid has, I've never seen anybody with those kinds of defensive instincts. And then she just leads in such a quiet way that, like, without her on the court is when you would notice that she's not there. She's so invaluable to us. And I don't know, I could go on and on about all of my kids, to be honest. I think Sophie is kind of one of those underappreciated players as well. I mean, I do think she has the numbers, but she's kind of like that Nikola Jokic kind of kid where, it's just such a tough matchup, being 6 feet tall and then can handle the ball and is one of our leading assists, and then gets a bunch of steals, blocks, rebounds. Like, I think she's just a tough matchup. And Kennedy's a microwave scorer. I think Grace is another kid that comes off the bench for us that I think she's like our third leading scorer. And to have that kind of selflessness, to have someone that's so good and talented and willing to come off the bench, I just think that speaks to the entire team and the culture that they were able to appreciate the teammates that they play with and understand that they're playing with good teammates and that they're still going to get their shine, just in a different way. I can't speak to the selflessness of the team that allows us to kind of thrive in that way.
It's fun to talk. This is not a knock at George Fox or Witt, but it's fun to talk about different teams in that conference that are starting to make things click. Because as you know, it makes things a little bit more interesting, to say the least. But at the same time, it's nice to see that whatever has worked for them is now working for everybody else. Mm-hmm. One thing that we're going to be kind of diving into a little bit that I'm curious your take on it, and we're going to do this further down the road, but it's on my mind. We've seen a lot of teams have to postpone or cancel games due to shortages of numbers, even UConn having to do that with lack of scholarship. There's the pending cliff that everybody talks about in enrollment dropping off. Where are the numbers in terms of recruiting when it comes to your success? And one of my point is with the conference is there enough talent that we can have multiple teams in the Northwest Conference still at the top?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think so. Our numbers in terms of recruiting have been a little bit based on need and where we were at. We only graduated, 2 seniors last year. And so we knew that the core of our team was coming back. And so we only brought in 2 players, and knowing that, the core of our team now is, in their junior, senior year, and whether they come back or not, that plays a huge part in how we recruit. And so we have a fairly large class coming in. I think for the most part, everyone is recruiting at a very high level in our conference. And so I do think that there's a little bit of a hangover from COVID, when I think it's kind of where you're seeing things right now. But I have no doubt in my mind that our conference is recruiting at a very high level. And so it's just a matter of time before each of them kind of clicks. I think a big part of the reason why there's been a couple of teams that are where they're at right now in terms of their records, there's been a lot of coaching changes, but I don't think that the enrollment or the recruiting I don't think that's the reason for anything. I do think that everyone's recruiting at a really high level.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just curious. Like I said, we'll dive into it a little bit deeper, but it's amazing. Women's basketball numbers are down something like 20% in the high school ranks, and since 2002, I think. But anyway, something we'll dive into. I just figured I had you on the phone. I'd ask you about it. Got to let you go, but I appreciate all the time. Obviously, a lot of conference games ahead of you, and everyone in the Northwest Conference certainly knows the way to the NCAA is the AQ. It doesn't mean at-larges aren't available. We've seen 2 come out of that conference, but and with new rules, it'd be nice to see multiples. So keep you all from facing one another. But what's the message you're telling the team as you get ready for Pacific, as you get ready for Linfield and the rest of the conference run? What's the ongoing message to the team about what you need to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to go back to, like, we're just kind of focusing on ourselves and continue to improve, because again, like you just mentioned, like, the AQ is really all that matters for us. You know, I mean, as much as we'd love to get in at large, that's not something that you can just bank on getting, you know. And so for us, it's, as much as these games are important, we need to continue to improve, because when we get to that conference tournament and trying to earn that AQ, that's really all that matters. And so I think for us, like, you know, because we're still fairly young and new to being ranked, I try not to allow that to affect anything that they're doing on an everyday basis, because at the end of the day, it means nothing in terms of getting into the tournament. And so we just need to continue to focus on improving and growing every single day. And then when we get to the conference tournament, we're just hoping that we're at our peak at that point in time, because that's really all that matters.
No, I get it. I totally do. And I appreciate you coming on and talking about the Loggers. It's fun to have you on. It's fun to talk about the Northwest Conference, and I'm really impressed with what you guys got going on. And what's scary is you got a lot of those pieces all coming back next year and the year after, and that's fun. And I know that makes things a little bit easier on your mind. Hey, as always, we give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those tuned in?
Yeah, again, I just want to emphasize, like, I'm so thankful to have such great assistant coaches. I think they do so much for us behind the scenes. And don't get that recognition. So again, Jolene LeMay and Elizabeth Pruitt, they're amazing coaches. And I also want to shout out the seniors that we have, Rebecca DeSala, Amanda Ferguson, Sammy Swardow, Katie Minahan, Grace Patini-Hillier. You know, their leadership through the COVID year and everything that we have accomplished over the last few years, I want to credit them, because they've really been the people that have set the standard for our culture. And now that whenever we get new incoming players into our program, you know, it's because of them that our culture is being sustained and flourishing right now. So,
well, congrats again. Well said. Appreciate the time. Enjoy the rest of the run. Good luck this weekend especially, and we'll look forward to talking not only about the Loggers down the road, but hopefully talking to you somewhere down the road as well.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Thanks, Dave.
Absolutely. Casey joining us here, Kushiyama, I should say, on the show. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll go back to Ohio. Mount Union talks to us about the men's basketball program. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. Back with more after this.
Great moments are born from great opportunity. That's what you have here tonight. That's what you've earned here tonight. This is your time. Now go out there and take it.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
In any way that we can.
To get a friend home safe.
To never blame the victim.
It's on us.
To stand up.
To make our community safe for all.
It's on us. It's on us. To look out for each other at parties.
It's on us.
To be more than just a bystander.
To step up and say something.
It's on us, all of us.
To stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
There are over 480,000 college athletes. Only 2% would go pro. That means over 470,000 will not get a shoe contract. No autographs. No private jets. No fan clubs. No Hall of Fame inductions. Instead, they will walk away with something much more valuable.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at d3hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the show. If you've got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us hoopsville at d3sports.com. Join us on Facebook for the simulcast, facebook.com/Hoopsville. We're also simulcasting on YouTube. You can interact with us there. I always mention this. We're on Instagram, though we haven't been using it very much of late because we're trying to revamp it. It doesn't like links, and that's half our challenge. We link everything. We'll figure it out, I assure you. By the way, thanks for bearing with us in the audio issues with Coach from Puget Sound. In the podcast, we'll adjust those so we can hear better. But we finally figured out where the glitch was. We changed the setting innocently, and it turns out it had massive problems. Anyway, we're going to continue rolling along because we got lots of coaches to talk to today, including Mount Union, who had a big game against Marietta. I'll be honest, I wasn't paying attention to the schedule when I chose my guest earlier this week to reach out to talk to. And then after I sent it out, I went, oh, big game against Marietta Wednesday night. Some people could accuse that of being a jinx on the Hoopsville side of things. So I want to thank Mount Union for winning that game so that no one can talk about the aforementioned jinx that does not exist. It's only in your minds and those who want to use it against us in mean and unnecessary ways. And now that I'm done with my little jokey section, Mount Union men's basketball number 3 in the top 25, playing really good. High expectations coming in. Let me emphasize that one again. High expectations coming in what is a very difficult OAC. Marietta going to the championship weekend last year. John Carroll supposedly with a bunch of transfers. Heidelberg showing that they're playing well, and then everybody else. Well, you got to get the answers on what's going on, right? So we go to the Hoopsville hotline as we always do, and joining us there is Mike Fuline, the head coach of Mount Union. And sir, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking the time. How are you?
Dave, that jinx almost happened with about 2 minutes to go in the game last night. We tried to blow a 12-point lead, but another great game. Obviously, Marietta is an incredible team and program, and we found a way to win and grind it out in this crazy league.
Hey, that wasn't a 12-point game in the first half when I was watching most of my watching. That was a good back-and-forth affair. What got it to 12 points?
Well, we got some stops, and we hit in transition, which really helped. Then with about 2:30 to go, Marietta is going to continue to fight, and they made some great shots, and we proceeded to split almost every free throw attempt that we have. So we were trading threes for ones, and I'm not very good at math, but that's going to catch up to you after a while. But we found a way, we fought through it, got some stops when we needed, and it's a big win for us.
Yeah, big win in conference. That's important as well. There's a lot of factors in there. It was at home. The trick is you're going to have to play them at their place eventually.
Yes.
We'll cross that bridge.
Yes.
But this OAC is a challenge. It's gotten deeper and deeper. You guys part of the reason for that over the years. What is it like this year with the way it's made up? Not only the expectations of Marietta, granted, have fallen back because of the talent they lost, but what everybody else has done to adjust to who Marietta had become.
It's a great question. From 1 to 10, it's just incredible coaches, and incredible players. So I think the one thing that you realize is, as a coach, how good you have to be. So sometimes when you're recruiting, you're looking at guys and you're like, okay, that they're a talented group, but are they good enough? I mean, it's just at that level right now, and I think Marietta, obviously these past 2 years, was one of the best teams, if not the best team that I've ever seen in our league, and in our 2019-20 group was a pretty special group as well. So once you start in the league, you start seeing those types of guys, and you're trying to compete. The level of recruiting just has to go up immensely, and it has. I mean, there's some tremendous talented players, and on the road, especially, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare, and but that's what makes this league as special as it is. That's what makes the relationships in the league incredible, and winning. I've been coaching for over 20 years, and winning an 18-game OAC championship is about as difficult and gratifying as you can imagine.
What's it like, though, with the expectations you guys have coming in? Not only what you've done over the last few years, but the talent you've brought in via the portal, and talent who's returned to the Purple Raiders. What's it like starting the season, and even to this point, with the expectations I'm sure you've put on yourselves, but everybody else has too?
I think you want to have those expectations. We want to be in that conversation every year. I think a lot of, once you taste it, Dave, you taste a little success and you get to a Sweet 16 and you feel that, and you win some championships. You just want to be there all the time. So the expectations, I don't know if they ever go away. What we're focusing on right now, we're a different team than we were in the past years. This team is more a defensive-minded team. They enjoy playing defense, which is great. We struggle a little bit sometimes from the free throw line and making some easy ones. So that's a little bit of a change. John and I were talking last night. I think we're both used to seeing everything go in over the past 5 or 6 years, and these teams just aren't like that. But I wouldn't want to, those teams would be guarded by this group either. So, it's just a different style. It's a different team. And that's what makes coaching fun, just trying to adjust to what you have. So, but the expectation part, I mean, it is what it is, man. We're every year we're trying to win the OAC. And if you can do that, usually you have a chance, to make a run in the tournament.
You guys had a magical season that came to an end in a thud last year. Obviously, Marietta, a very good team, beat you by 2 in what was a tremendous conference battle in the championship game. And then you lost the opener against Stevens by 10. Now, granted, I don't think everyone thought you guys were a world-beating team, but you talk about the Sweet 16. Your expectations are up there. How is it to recover from that? And is it spurring this season?
It is. I mean, I think, that was a tough one. That's probably the toughest that we've had here. But I put that all on me. Not to say we're overlooking that game, but when Williams walks into your gym, your mind, you see them, they look like the Celtics, and I think, in our minds, we're like, okay, if we can get past this first one, we're going to be in for an absolute dogfight the second one. Well, Steven said they were here, man, and they came at us. And they played extremely well, made some really tough shots. And, it was just kind of a nightmare situation for us. But we have many of those guys, almost all those guys back. So having to get them ready, if we're fortunate enough to make that spot again, should be pretty easy. But it was, you come into this season and you just want to get back there, right? And you just want to get back there and give yourself a chance, to make things a little bit better than what they were. And there's no guarantees for that. But the grind of the 3 to 4 months to get in that position is something that is a challenge and something that we're embracing right now.
Yeah, that challenge certainly is there. I'm curious, do you guys have the gumption to put the goal of where you want to be in March on the whiteboard before the season begins? Or are the goals somewhat a little closer? And I don't mean in the sense of a lower bar, but we have goals in January, we have goals in February. We aren't even looking at March.
So our goal coming in, the one thing that I've learned through coaching is, you try to put all these, we're going to go to the Final Four. Like, it's too much. It's too much for them. It's too much for us. Early on, I think we found out that we can be pretty special defensively when we're connected. So our goal, and it's going to be the goal the entire year, is let's be the best defensive team in the country this year. And we show signs of that. Obviously, we show signs of that struggling. But we feel if that can happen, that the offense eventually will come, and we're going to get ourselves in position to win. And that's where we're at. We just want to be great defensively. We want to share the basketball, care about each other, and those are all the goals. And I think when you accomplish that, then the bigger goals seem to take care of themselves. We're that type of team, and I think we can be that special on the defensive side of the floor.
Special, defense, important, but you're scoring 80 some odd points a game. The offense is obviously clicking. I asked this of the Puget Sound coach. You kind of hinted at that. Is it defense minded first, or is it offensive minded first?
Definitely defense, definitely defense. We're scoring we'll get, even last night, once we get out in transition, get some stops and let these guys kind of play. They're pretty athletic group. They make really good decisions in the open court, but that has to start on the defensive side of the floor. So, we're still trying to execute at a higher level offensively. There's times when we watch the film, you want to turn it off because it's just not very pretty. But when you have Christian Parker to throw it into, that helps tremendously. And then we have tremendous guards. I mean, we have great guards who, when they get going, Darrell Newsome got going last night, hit some key threes. So the nice part about this group is we're deep. I actually need to start playing some guys even more minutes. But we're deep and we're capable of scoring. I think we're at our best when we're defending like we can. And man, if we can throw a few shots in, then that makes us a tough out.
Looking at the stats, just on what story they tell, nearly 19 points a game for Christian Parker. Gurley's putting in 14. You got Newsome putting in 10. Mansfield's got 9, 7.5 from Hudson. Of course, Parker's also your leading rebounder at 7.5, but a lot of guys contributing in that factor. You've got some really good inside shooting. You've got some pretty decent outside shooting. Is this a matter of, hey, let's get Parker and Gurley running and we'll figure it out? Or is it a matter of everybody contributes and all of a sudden you forget about Parker and Gurley if you're a defense?
Well, our philosophy here has always been, we want to try to have, 5 in double figures, every single game. I just think that makes you so hard to guard, when you can spread the defense out. But what's happened this year is it has been a different guy. It's been a different guy throughout the season so far, which is nice. But we would like to get more consistency out of multiple guys scoring. There's games where if we're not shooting the ball well, then the ball must go in, to Christian and let them figure it out. And, teams, they try to double. Now that's that inside out three, which, we shoot a really high percentage at. So it's kind of it's a by committee, but the goal, Dave, is to have multiple guys in double figures. The teams that I've coached, when you have a guy averaging 20 or above, have not been very good record wise. So, we want to share it. We want to find the open guy. We want to make the right play and trust your teammates. And we've done that for the most part this season.
Tell me a little bit about Gurley, and I'm not trying to focus just on him, but it's an interesting development because after the 2021 season, which obviously was lost for most people outside of a little bit of playing time, he transferred to Youngstown State and figured that's where he's going to play, and so be it, and kind of the beginning of what is now a little bit more of a trend. He's back.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't play at Youngstown last year. He's decided to return, finish things off with you guys. Tell me a little bit about that dynamic, and what's it like not only to welcome back a first-team OAC member a year later, but what's that like to get him to re-gel with the program?
That was after that COVID, like you said, the 2021 season. It was just a weird a weird year. And I've known Colin since 5th grade. He came to all our camps, and his family's from Alliance. And we just had a talk. We sat down, and I said, "Hey, man, I think you feel like you can play it at a higher level. If this is something that you want to do, let's make a call and see if we can get that to happen." And it was a couple-day conversation, but I think he wanted to. I mean, he was so good here his freshman and sophomore year, and he wanted to see that challenge, and Jared Calhoun is a good friend of mine and has always liked Colin in his game. Said, yeah, we'll take him. We'll take him as a walk-on, probably redshirt him, just so he can get, accustomed to the program and that way of life. And then by the end of the year, this place too has a way of growing on you, and I think he saw some of his teammates, and he would come to some of these games, and he missed it, he just did. And so later in that, in the springtime, came up and we had a talk, and I said, "Hey, man, you got to make this right with your teammates." We went 23-5 without him last year, so he did, man. He met with all the guys, and especially with Christian. Darrell Newsom is one of his best friends. Jeffrey Mansfield was a friend of his who transferred in, from Wilmington. So it kind of worked out really well. He has matured immensely. What Youngstown did for him is going to help him not only in basketball, but in life. And, he's a grown man, and he's someone that I want to see develop not only on the floor, but off. And it helps him being here. He's turned out to be a very good leader for us. But to see his growth, man, from his freshman year, he make me want to pull my hair out. Some of this gray, man, that's all Colin, and to what he is right now. It's kind of a cool coming back story. But I can't, thank the Youngstown people for just helping him. And I talked to those guys twice a week, and it was just about that development and maturity. And he has come such a long way, and got a 3.2 in the classroom in the fall, so things like that. We want to win games, Dave. We do. Trust me, man. But at the end of the day, you want to develop these guys, especially, the ones who you've known for a lot of years.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I appreciate the perspective and the insight on that one. We don't talk about transfers all that often, but we don't usually see any leave and then return to their programs, especially all conference members who can make such a key difference. Quickly, before I let you go, the season ahead, you got 2 more games in conference on the first half of the schedule, and then you'll pivot to the second half of that schedule. Your one loss in conference, one loss period, is against Heidelberg. You'll get your chance to revenge that in just over a week's time. But again, it's the battle. What's the message to the guys in the locker room about? Obviously, it's one game at a time, but what's the overall scoping message about how you guys want to finish?
Well, it is. I mean, it sounds like such coach speak, but it's the only way you can survive. I mean, any coach that comes on here will tell you it's just the next game. We go to Otterbein. They're so well coached. We've struggled there in the past. These games are 2-3 possession games. So just finding a way, and it goes back to that defense. Let's just travel our defense, man. We just want to bring it, play with just high energy, high emotion. And then, I mean, at the end of the day, if that's good enough to get us a win, great. If it's not, then we move on to the next game, So just really simplifying it, having a great plan in place, and just bringing energy on that side of the floor. And then, once you're done with that first 9 games, you kind of have an idea now. That's usually when these teams that have been successful here, we just kind of are in a nice groove, rotation-wise, role-wise. And then you just try to make a run, you try to make a run for it. I don't know if one loss is going to win the conference this year, man. I'm telling you, it's just, it's a lot. I remember the first time we won the league here, I think it was 4 losses, that won it that year, or 3 or something like that. I miss those days, I miss those days where, there's a little bit of slack, but I just don't think that's going to happen. this year. There's
I was
some
going to
really
say a
good
little bit more
teams.
latitude, a little bit more of a
Oh
parachute.
man, John Carroll's really good, and Heidelberg obviously is very good. Marietta's very good, so it just never ends.
Yeah, totally get that. Before we let you go, I know you guys were already kind of buckled up and getting ready to have Mount Union Athletics move forward without Lenny Reich because he was retiring. But then Lenny, unfortunately, passing. I know you guys put the patch on your jerseys. Lenny was a huge part of this show's history. Great friend of mine from afar. It's not like we were that close.
Yeah.
What's it been like dealing with the emotion of Lenny not only having left the campus after all those years, which again, you guys were kind of buckled up and ready for anyway, but to lose him in general.
Well,
And I should add, and what you guys are doing to memorialize him.
Yeah, it still doesn't really seem like it's real, right? So maybe that's a little denial for all of us here, but that was a tough time. I'll be honest with you, Dave. I was with him up, before he was going to leave for Alliance. He and I seemed to always be here every day at the same time and just drink coffee and talk. And to watch him struggle, I was just constantly, hey man, let's get in there, let's try to get this done. And talking to him every day in the hospital, he seemed in great spirits, and then it just kind of took a quick turn there. It's just devastating, as a father first, and a husband. We were the same age to see what he went through and what they went through, and then what we all went through. You don't understand. Like, we knew how valuable he was, and then when he's not here, I mean, it's crazy. I can't tell you how many times, Larry Karras would call me and we would talk, and he goes, just miss Lenny. I mean, he had the answer to everything. He just did. And nights after, like last night, there's a little bar in town that him and I and some coaches would go, and you miss those times, man. It's hard. It's still, you can't put it into perspective yet. Still trying to deal with all those things. But he meant a great deal to Division III and to athletics and the people he touched and the Hall of Fame career that he had. He was so passionate, about Division III. He taught me a lot about Division III. He introduced me to you. I remember early on, I didn't know what D3 hoops, was all about. But I miss his friendship. We all do. And I speak for the entire campus. We just miss him. And it's just something I'm not sure we'll get over anytime soon, maybe ever, man. Like, it's just one of those things that, life just hits you with the right hook, and it hit us, and it doesn't go away. That sting doesn't go away. And especially during the holidays and big wins. And, you look at our football game against Baldwin Wallace, and, if you don't believe in some things, man, I tell you what, it's pretty amazing. But having that football run, and then obviously our team right now, and having, those good times, and him not being here is just, it's brutal, buddy. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I do think there's some who thought that the football bouncing had nothing to do with Lenny. Those are outside your campus, though.
Yes. I'm sure. Yeah.
Hey, I appreciate all the time. Good luck the rest of the season. We'll look forward to keeping track of the Purple Raiders and how you all are doing, and talk to you down the road. But as always, we give the guests the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuned in?
Yeah, it was just, again, the Lenny situation. At the funeral, we talked, there was so many SIDs here. And just, it's to all those people who make this work, who give countless hours to make all of this happen, and make it important. That's the biggest thing. Lenny had a way you felt like you were at a big school, right? And to all his friends and all those people that he touched, and just thank you. And hopefully all the young people who are surrounded by that learn from the guys who are very passionate about this job.
Well said, and I agree entirely. I wish I could have been there at the funeral myself, but I know there was a good turnout and well represented, and certainly was thinking about him on that day. Good luck the rest of the way. Look forward to chatting with you. Take care of yourselves and enjoy.
Thank you, David, for having us.
Absolutely. He joins us on the Blue Frame Technology Hoopsville Hotline. It is Mike Fuline. They've got a game up against Otterbein coming up here on Saturday. Then they're at Muskegon next Wednesday. Then they turn around and start playing the other side of the conference schedule, and it starts with Heidelberg and John Carroll. Lots ahead of them. That Marietta rematch won't happen until February 8th. Take a break. When we come back, we head down to Texas for a debut. We've never had this St. Thomas group on our show. The Celts join us to talk about their nationally ranked men's basketball team that's finally eligible for the NCAA Tournament. You listen to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the NABC studios. NABC WBCA studios. More after this.
Coach of the Year, Administrator of the Year, All-America Team, Wade Trophy. The WBCA doesn't just honor coaches, but players, administrators, and much more. The WBCA strives to honor those who have contributed to the advancement of women's basketball. Celebrate the present, honor the past, look to the future.
For the love of the game, but for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that, a lot more.
Sure, the game is important, but as we work so hard to build both mind and body, it's more about team.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics, and in giving the gift of sport to those for whom it seemed an impossible dream, we are working to make this a better world.
Help us keep that dream alive.
You can make a difference.
It's on us. It's on all of us. And it's time to act now.
It's on us to start the change. It's on us to be the change. It's on us. It's on Division III. It's on all of us to stop sexual assault.
I learned a lot of valuable lessons playing college football. I never thought about the health benefits of exercise until I actually started to talk to coaches in college. It's not only just for performance, it's for life. My coaches instilled the importance of well-being, not only building up strength, mental health, getting enough sleep, eating properly is all what it is to be healthy. I decided that I want to go into personal trainer and share my knowledge that I obtained in college about physical and mental well-being.
Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. As we get rolling along, we will be hearing from a debut on the show. We don't get those all that often. We're going to actually go down to Texas and talk to a St. Thomas school. No, I'm not confused, and they're not purple. We're so used to talking to Minnesota's St. Thomas on this. By the way, great season that they're having, especially on the men's side. Congratulations to them as that transition to D1, which officially was adopted 2 years ago about this time. I think. No, I apologize. It was. They discussed it 2 years ago at the NCAA convention. They didn't fully put it in place until late spring, now that I remember. But anyway, long story short, we're going to talk to St. Thomas in Texas here momentarily in Houston, which, by the way, now means when I go to Houston every once in a while, which apparently I do with Major League Baseball, I actually have a school I can go check out versus Maryland Baylor, which is a little too far away. I got to remember that now. By the way, it's supposed to be at meetings in Houston in February. On the one weekend, I had nothing else going on. They moved them to Arizona on the one weekend I've got lots going on. So D3, you're going to have to bear with me late in February as we cross seasons a little bit. If you got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville, hashtag Hoopsville, email us hoopsville@d3sports.com. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Hoopsville, where we're live simulcasting the show. So much more. We'll tweet out our guest here in a moment as we do talk St. Thomas men's basketball, which just reminds me, I got to make a quick fix here. Talking about where they've been as a program because they're finally eligible for the NCAA tournament, which is the biggest thing, and which means they're also finally eligible to be on this be on our top 25, which they've taken full advantage of because they're now ranked number 17 in that poll, which is pretty darn impressive. So joining us on the Blue Frame Technology Hoopsville hotline, it's their head coach, and I think it's Celts. We'll double check. Anthony Medina joins us here on the show. Coach, thanks for taking the time. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Division III officially. I know it's been a few years you've been in it anyway because you've been making hay. We'll talk about that as well, but welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun for me to be here.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for taking the time. I know it's not easy, especially midday. Let's start over to some extent because COVID threw a wrinkle in all of this. You guys were moving into Division III. There's a certain amount of years you get that process. You got to kind of change the way you guys all do things to transition to how D3 has things done. COVID throws a wrinkle into that scheduling and all of that. And then you guys come out really ready to go. Not always is the transition smooth. And you guys have taken advantage of it, been right in the conference race every step of the way. You finally, the fruit is there now. You can enjoy it all. You can qualify for the tournament and all that. How difficult has it been? What's the transition been like? And how excited are you guys about this season?
There's a lot in that. I feel like the last 4 years have gone pretty quickly, but there's a whole lot that happened. Our last year in the NAI, we competed in the Red River Athletic Conference. And we were ranked in the top 25 in their final poll. We finally felt like we had made some progress at that level. And then the new president came in and made a decision that we were going to move to Division III. We started to add sports. We started that provisional process that lasts 3 years. So at the end of each season, we were not allowed to play in our conference tournament the first year. We were allowed to play conference games. The second season, we were permitted to play in the conference tournament because it was the COVID year. And then last season, we were permitted to play in the conference championship or conference tournament again, but still not allowed to go to the NCAA tournament. So it's been a pretty long run for us. A little strange, as a program to win your last game of the year 3 years in a row and not win a national championship. And so for us, it was it's been tough. It's been tough to keep guys motivated, to keep them focused. The stage that we're on right now is what we've been fighting for so long. And just preaching to our guys in the program that this is what it's been all about, just being patient to get to this point and have a chance to play for a national title.
Yeah, you kind of nailed it down there. I forgot about a couple of those things. Of course, not able to play in the conference tournament, then able to play conference games, and then conference tournament action. And I remember we started looking into the bylaws like, okay, so if they win, that means the loser probably is the AQ because they won the regular season. Curveballs, as they say. You guys had to transition a little bit, as you said, out of NAIA, which meant with scholarship money and all of that stuff. How much of the talent did you retain? And I ask it serious, because of COVID, you got some exemptions in terms of eligibility. How much did that almost keep some talent on a little bit longer?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting that the people always say that we moved from NAIA. What a lot of people don't realize is that we were a small athletic department. We had 4 athletic teams in the past, and the only reason we competed in NAIA was because we didn't have enough sports to play NCAA. We've always fit the profile better for NCAA than we did in NAIA, but we just didn't have enough funds to have enough sports to be NCAA. And so back when we were playing NAIA ball, the limit is 10 full scholarships, and we had less than 1, which is not uncommon for NAIAs to have less than the full boat or be less than fully funded. So for us, instead of having, 10 guys on full scholarship, we would divide that 1 scholarship and each guy on the team gets a few $1,000s. After our first year, in our provisional year, we lost basically the entire team in terms of guys that had scholarship money. Last season, we had none. And the season before, we had 1. And so we haven't had a ton of guys on scholarship, so it was actually pretty lucky. And because of the way that we had to recruit in the past, we didn't have a lot of resources in terms of scholarships. our recruiting really hasn't changed. We didn't lose a ton of kids when they didn't have money, and so the transition was actually pretty smooth for us because we really belonged in NCAA to begin with, and Division III to begin with.
Not the most surprising thing to hear, because we've known a lot of schools that have had that argument. Nebraska Wesleyan had both feet in both doors, as it were, or both windows for a period of time before they finally decided, no, we're D3, and went full in on D3. We've known other members who've thought that, and certainly to some degree we've seen an influx of NAIA members coming to D3 for the same point. Granted, you need more sports, as you point out, and that's an investment financially, because it feels like the universities decided to really dive in, and you've got a bit of a niche. I think and correct me if I'm wrong, the closest Division III is Mary Hardin Baylor, and they're a little bit of distance away. So you've got a little bit of an opportunity there in that part of Texas to kind of grasp at recruits that may not have a lot of other options. Is that a fair way of saying it?
That's the best way to put it. I mean, TLU, Texas Lutheran, is about 2.5 or 45 minutes away. Mary Hardin Baylor is roughly the same. So when it comes to Houston kids that want to stay close to home, we're the best spot for them. Gives us the best opportunity to develop relationships with those kids, have an idea of who's getting recruited at what levels. And so a big part of our success in terms of recruiting has come from just being right here in the city, and there not being a lot of Division IIIs nearby. Really, there's not any NAIs either. Lee College is the only junior college nearby, and then everybody else is Division I, with Houston Christian, Rice, Texas Southern, and U of H right here in town. So we're totally different in our own space. You're totally right.
Yeah, and that's come up in some other conversation. Christopher Newport, surrounded by D1s in the area of Virginia, and a lot of people are like, well, maybe they'll move up to Division. No, if it works, you want to stay there. And so it's interesting to hear that dynamic. How much have you learned about Division III? You're a 2012 grad. Obviously, as you said, you guys were NAIA, but always felt like you're D3. Were you always looking at that, and so have always understood the division, or have you guys had a bit of a learning curve?
Big time learning curve. When we first came in, the transition from it's NCAA, just in terms of rules and eligibility, that piece was important for us to understand, because you're under the watchful eye of the NCAA, right, as they're trying to bring you in and make the determination as to whether or not you could be a good member. So it was a really heavy dose of understanding Division III rules, how things operate. I was lucky to be at a Division II at Missouri Western State for 2 years. I had a good feel for the guidelines, the handbook. So educating myself took a little bit of time, but we have been able to do it. That would be the biggest component to the transition in terms of NAIA to NCAA.
And the key, of course, being, divisions each have their own rules and dynamics and such, and getting used to those. We're still getting used to them. I've been around the division since I came to college in '95, and I'm still trying to get used to some stuff. Hey, let's pivot and talk about the team, because this is a team that obviously was very successful last year, is building on that success. You're led by a sophomore in Calvin Williams IV, which I don't see all that often. It doesn't usually go that far into the Roman numerals. Freddie Ricks, your senior, the third, should point out, second on the team. And you're getting really big contributions from our freshmen and Nick Anderson and Zach Galazewski.
Galazewski. If his mother hears that, she's going to kill you.
Yeah. I saw this ZEW, but I've seen that done 6 ways. I never know. But a big contribution from him. And there's other guys. Give me a sense of who this team is, the players, what clicks, what makes you guys as good as you are.
It's been a combination of putting these guys together and just trying to find spaces where they can be good together. Last year we lost 2 of the best defensive players that we may ever have. They were super versatile players, Christian Alekwe and Cameron Gibbs. And so for me, I thought that defensively we wouldn't be nearly as good this year, and that we'd have to play a little faster, try to have more possessions. And actually hasn't quite been that way. This team has been pretty surprising. Calvin hasn't played college basketball in 2 years. Coming to us, he came from a junior college, but he had a 6th year. And then Zach hasn't typically gotten to play a ton. He was a bench guy or kind of a backup point guard in the past. So most of the guys that you're seeing are either freshmen or guys with very limited experience. Outside of Freddie Ricks, Andrew Wynn, and Josh Sanchez, the entire team is pretty much new in terms of the system and playing at the college level. If I'm being honest, I think the thing that makes us good is that we're willing to defend. we can play bigger, we can play smaller if we need to. And then on the offensive end, having guys like Calvin and Zach to create plays for other people goes a long way. Anybody that watches this play could tell you that Zach and Calvin do a great job driving the ball. And because they can finish and they're willing passers, they're kind of that double threat when they hit the paint. And so it leaves it up to the defense. How do you want to handle these two guys? And so if we defend at a high enough level, we give ourselves a chance to win pretty much every night because those two guys can help generate enough points.
Holding your opponents to a smidge under 64 points per contest is pretty remarkable. And you've played some pretty good opponents that have had some success. Your loss in early part of the season was to Redlands, 80-72. Your loss recently to Hardin-Simmons out of the ASC in a low-scoring affair, 66-63. Of course, interesting enough, you got a win back against Centenary, 54-50. Low scoring isn't a problem. Tell me a little bit about the season, though. Those two blemishes, certainly not bad ones in any way, shape, or form. You got some big wins, including over Trinity, Texas.
Yep. Yeah. I think the big thing for us is we can look at the losses in a couple of different ways. For us, they were great learning experiences. Redlands play a really fast pace. They pressure you. They're up in the gaps. And if you look at the loss, Simmons, they're very methodical with how they play. For us, they were really good learning experiences that will hopefully help us grow going into postseason play, keep us humble, keep us sharp, and then help find different weaknesses within our defense, weaknesses within ourselves offensively, so that we can continue to grow. And so, no, we don't want them. Obviously, we'd rather than learn from wins, but they were really good opportunities for us to find spaces in ourselves to get better. Going into Centenary, that was one of the biggest conference games we have on the road at their place. It's hard to play at the Gold Dome. To be not lost at Hardin-Simmons before that, there's no telling what we would have looked like going into Centenary that night. So the loss at Hardin-Simmons helped us a lot. Putting ourselves in position to be blown out because we're defending. And we're talking a couple possessions either way. We might be undefeated. We might have single-digit wins. It could be one way or the other. The good thing for us is that we trust our defense, and we know that we can put a group of guys on the floor that can defend and give us a chance to win.
Fascinating to hear that, and I agree. That's an interesting take. Sometimes that loss is the one that refocuses you, which is really helpful down the road. I'm curious, again, first full year eligible for the NCAA tournament. When I look at the schedule, I'm curious, how much are you paying attention to what a team needs to present to the committees? Obviously, win the AQ, and this is somewhat a moot point. But in terms of at-large, or in terms of the best, and I'm using the term seeding in quotation marks because we know it's not official seeding, but positioning to best position yourself for an NCAA tournament run should you qualify. Are you guys fully aware of all that? Or is that not the focus right now because you're still just focused on becoming a full-fledged D3 member? And I ask that because there's signs in this schedule that say, okay, you might be looking at that kind of stuff. And there's signs in the schedule goes, no, I think right now they're just focused on other things.
I'm still learning. For me, it was trying to find as many games that we could possibly schedule that fit within our budget as possible, right? So if you look, we're playing as many ASC schools as we can. We reached out to all of them and tried to get as many as we possibly could. If we could have played all ASC schools and stayed as, if we would be happy to do that and just play ASC schools and do that with our non-conference schedule because it's the most cost-effective thing that we can do with another conference being so close. And so when we're not able to fill that, then we have to get outside and just try to find any games that we can. That's how we ended up California playing Claremont and Redlands. And again, we were just looking for any games that we could find at that point. And the guarantees helped to make that possible. And we were actually lucky that one of them was Claremont, because they've had such a great year and they're a good program. Same thing with Redlands. We're hopeful that Redlands can keep moving, have some success here to keep the resume up. Now, the others, you're looking at Arlington Baptist and Kansas Christian, a very NAIA, right? Like you get down to the wire in scheduling in NAIA. There's a lot of NCCAA schools. There's a lot of other types of schools that we have been in contact with and played with before. And that's how they landed on there. Couldn't find anybody else. And we said, man, we got to get games. And so we took those two. In the future, we won't be doing that. We're going to try to keep a full D3 schedule to give ourselves the best chance to get in that large in case we have that slippage and don't win that AQ.
Yeah, that's the tough part. You're in Texas. There's a lot of ripe opportunities in front of you, including out of the ASC. The disadvantage with that is you got to cross pollinate, as we say, in the region as much as possible, or try and find as much diversity in the schedule as you can. But I get it. And that's why I was more curious about it, because again, as good as you are, we aren't used to that in a team that's transitioned into Division III. Is the priority just filling out the schedule, which I totally understand, or are you already understanding the nuances? And it seems like you're right in between. You understand some of the nuances because you're talking about Redlands and trying to hope that they can improve their resume to give you guys some help. But at the same time, understanding you just got to fill out the schedule. And listen, I promise when we get to the final weekend of the regular season, we're talking about mock selections. We won't give you that hard a time for the schedule because I can understand being in that situation. If you're like this in 10 years though, Anthony, I think we're going to have a different convo. But again, and you talk about budget, so that's great to hear, and I appreciate that insight. Is there anything else about this whole process that you think is enlightening for even those of us who've known Division III for so long to best understand?
For us specifically?
Yeah, or the process in general.
The transition process, it's a completely different ballgame, right? And when you move from NAI into Division III, specifically with the scheduling, when you're looking at scheduling in NAI, now there was still 2 divisions when we were NAI, right? So there were 120 teams in Division I, right? You basically multiply that by 3.5, right? 325% is what we're dealing with, and having to understand how we fit and what our schedule needs to look like. I'm still trying to figure out who's good, right? Like, I don't know the coaches as well. I don't know the programs as well. For scheduling for us, that's the biggest key, is trying to understand where we fit, right? And so, like, we've had to leverage guys like Jimmy Smith over at Trinity. He's a good friend. He does an incredible job of sharing information and helping me understand. It's funny because I sent him my schedule and I said, "What do you think?" And
He's going to stop sharing.
Well, what he told me, he gave me great information. He said, "Hey, man, looked at the schedule and said, these are the ones that are good. These are the ones that you should probably not have in the future." And he's been a really big advocate for trying to help our conference, which is what I think is really beneficial. He cares about the collective. I have the same focus. If there's things that I can do to help other people and our conference to make it more competitive, make it more prominent, that's our push right now. That's our focus for both he and I. And he recognizes that we can be a positive force for the whole conference if we understand how to fit within Division III.
No, it totally makes sense. We talk in Division I, a lot of the conference actually approves out-of-conference scheduling for a lot of schools because they want to best position themselves to the NCAA tournament, even if they're a mid-major. And we have a little bit of that in Division III. Not that the conference office runs that, but you do have coaches who have conversations going, hey, you need to help the rest of this conference. And you're in an interesting scenario down there because there are schools down there in those 2 conferences that have absolutely no interest in doing that whatsoever. So it's interesting here that Jimmy's trying to do that, and others, I'm sure. I'd love to keep talking to you, and I would, but A, you've got better things to do. B, I've got to get on to the rest of the show. But I appreciate you taking the time. Listen, we talk about this stuff, about the nuances of Division III all the time, so you're welcome to reach out to us off air. You're welcome to reach out to a wealth of other guys in Division III and gals who certainly know this stuff well. We love helping everybody with this stuff because we find it fascinating, and we do want the best there is of D3. Welcome to Division III officially. Great to have you on the show. And when I am back in Houston again, I got to make sure to drop by the campus. But in the meantime, we have a tradition on the show. We always give the guests the final word. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with those who may be tuned into the broadcast?
Truthfully, it's just the coolest thing about Division III, the community. I had no idea that there was such a really big community that follows Division III basketball. There's so many of these things that are going on, and how well everybody knows each other. I'm just really excited to be part of it. Still trying to find our way, still trying to figure out how to do it right. It takes me a while, so I hope guys are patient with me. But I'm just happy to be involved.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge community. I think it's what makes Division III so great. We aren't D1, but we're not like everybody else where it's just kind of a division out there. We really do love it across the board in all sports. Congratulations again. Enjoy the rest of the way. Good luck. And I have a feeling we'll still be talking about you come late February, so I'm looking forward to that as well.
I hope you're right. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time. Take care of yourself. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
Anthony Medina joining us on the Blue Frame Technology Hoopsville Hotline. Appreciate him taking the time out of Houston. Great to chat with them. Looking forward to a new look down there, a different taste, and a different flair for us in not only the SCAC and the ASC. By the way, lots to talk about those two conferences too. There's a lot of moving pieces going on, and I think the ASC is ready to splinter. That's all I'm going to say about that. We're going to take a break. When we come back, jump into Pennsylvania. Scranton women's basketball will talk to us about how great things are going there under a brand new head coach, Ben O'Brien. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the NABC WBCA studios. Back with more after this.
These are your teams, your players, your community of fans. This is where they play, where they practice, where you cheer. At every meet, every event, every game. Your community is passionate, dedicated, supportive. You know the tension of a close game and the thrill of the win. So while you're cheering, keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary. If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
I used to never really talk, ever. I was afraid if I said something wrong, everyone would laugh at me. But then I started to play golf with Special Olympics. It helped me to find my voice. And now everyone else is speechless.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
I learned a lot of valuable lessons playing college football. I never thought about the health benefits of exercise until I actually started to talk to coaches in college. It's not only just for performance, it's for life. My coaches instilled the importance of well-being, not only building up strength, mental health, getting enough sleep, eating properly is all what it is to be healthy. I decided that I want to go on a personal trainer and share my knowledge that I obtained in college about physical and mental well-being.
Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody, as we continue to roll along in this matinee show. Reminder, we'll be back on the air 7 o'clock live on Monday with our next show. Next Thursday, we should be at 7 o'clock live as well. In 2 weeks' time, though, I believe, I got to double check my schedule, I believe we're back to this matinee look on the show, just due to I've got games in the evenings and I need to work right now. Speaking of which, if you'd like to donate to the show, sponsor, advertise, partner, invest, whatever the case may be that helps keep us moving along, please get in touch with us. I know there's a few I need to circle back to. Also, at the same time, I want to thank our partners at the National Association of Basketball Coaches and the Women's Basketball Coaches Association for coming on board once again. Of course, D3Hoops.com, Pat Coleman, and the rest of the crew for being so supportive of our work. Pivoting back to women's basketball and a debut of sorts again on this show, not for the program, but for the coach. It's interesting. Mike Strong was the head coach at Scranton for so long. I got very used to Mike Strong being up there. And since he retired, we've had, I think we're now on coach number 4. We had the interim, then Trevor, then Nick, and now Ben. Yeah, we're at coach number 4. It feels very strange to me. Nick I just forgot last name of Nick. I apologize. He went on to Division I. Sent a very nice note to us after that decision. It was neat to catch up with him from an outsider's perspective of Division III and interact with him. I kind of miss him. but I'm looking forward to meeting the new coach and talking with him as Ben O'Brien took over the program. He's from the area, high school background of sorts, and looking forward to understanding what that all means from his perspective. So joining us on the Blue Frame Technology Hoopsville Hotline, it's the aforementioned Ben O'Brien, the head coach of the 6th-ranked Scranton Royals, who are not missing a beat. They're undefeated at this point. I swear you could just plug and play maybe me into the coaching ranks, coach, and you guys would just have as much success as well. And that's not a knock on you. That's just kind of crazy that way. How are you? Welcome.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to be here.
What drew you to the Scranton job? Let's start with that, because what drew you to the Scranton job? What intrigued you about taking over that program? Because it was interesting. I didn't know anything about you, but when I asked some people around, they went, this is a tremendous hire. So what is it about you that got you so interested in coming to the Royals?
So I grew up, as you mentioned, in this area. I grew up as a kid. So I'm the youngest of 4. I grew up, our parents used to take us to the Lady Royal Friday night double headers. So some of my earliest memories was coming to the Long Center. The place was jam-packed. It was during an era when both teams were consistently competing for national championships. So it was the hottest ticket in town for many, many years, so much so that the men for a very long time used to come out to Jumpin' Jack Flash, that great Rolling Stones song. And after the games, my brother and I would go home. First of all, we made our parents buy the cassette, the single at the time. We'd have the single. We put up the basketball hoop we shared a bedroom. We put up the basketball hoop on our bedroom door, and we turn on Jumpin' Jack Flash, and then we would get in layup lines, and we would do our layups after the game. So the Royals and the Lady Royals have always been a very, very special place for our area. And the story I just gave you, countless people that grew up in this area during that time would have the same exact thing. So when the opportunity presented itself to come and be the head coach for the Lady Royals, it was a really special opportunity, a surreal experience, and one that, I jumped on the minute that I had it.
Your story about the community is what is, I don't want to say unique at Scranton. We certainly have a lot of places where the community kind of embraces the college campus, even though they have, for lack of a better description, 0 ties. They don't have a player on the team. They don't have anybody who goes to the school. But, in Hope and Calvin, they do that. Certainly a bunch of schools on the CCIW have that experience. Wisconsin, some of the more rural locations have that, whereas I'm more in a metro area, and we're happy to see 150 people from the campus show up to a game. So it's great to hear that perspective from somebody who really grew up with a program as if it was a D1 program. As if it was something significant. That said, you had a huge success in high school. 14 seasons, 13 league titles, 10 district championships, 13 state tournament appearances, 347 wins to only 43 losses in that amount of time. What made it the decision to turn and go to Scranton now?
Yeah, so although there's been some turnover here, as you mentioned, the last couple of years, Mike Strong had obviously built the program and had been here for a long time. A job like this, a coach like me growing up in an area like this is a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing. And when the job came open, I felt at that time well-positioned to go after it, and was ready to do so from a basketball standpoint, from a family standpoint, and sort of everything kind of lined up when it came up for this time that I thought I was ready to go. So I went after it with everything I had.
I figured there had been something in there. You went to Penn State, by the way. I don't believe you played. I'm saying that only because I think we would have remembered that little detail. But what is it now? You're there. You're immersed. You had a really good team already in the cupboards, as it were. It wasn't bare. It hardly ever is bare. That's my joke about I could probably come up and they'd still have the same success because they're just that darn good. So what was the transition like? What's it been like for the first half of the season?
Yeah, the transition's been really great. The players have been awesome. The administration, everyone has been incredibly warm and welcoming. I think the biggest challenge with coming in and coaching a new team, where I was used to every year bringing in 2 or 3 new players a year, right? So we had an established identity, an established culture. The existing roster, the old upperclassmen always helped bring the younger guys in. So I was basically teaching 2 or 3 players the system a year. Well, when you come in and you're taking over a brand new team, well, now you're teaching 16 new 16 new players. We're all trying to get familiar with one another. So that was the biggest adjustment. We just weren't able to go as fast as all coaches want to go. You want to have everything in yesterday. And I just had to be, patient and just sort of stay the course and make sure we were putting everything the right way and not doing it necessarily the fastest way. So it just took a little while longer than I was accustomed to. So I'd say that was kind of the biggest adjustment.
I was going to say, are you running what you want to run? Is it as a coach who comes in, is there anything from the old system you hold on to? What is that balancing act like?
Yeah. So I think one of the advantages coming in from high school, in high school, you get the team that you get, right? So every year it's kind of different. I mean, it's whoever shows up, and you as a coach are your job is to figure out what you have and try to highlight those strengths and try to minimize those weaknesses. So I'm not really somebody who comes in and says, this is my system, guys, like adjust to that. I view it completely opposite. I'm coming in, let me evaluate what we have, and I need to adjust to them. And that's kind of been my approach this year, but that's always been my approach. So from that standpoint, nothing has really changed. We are, and our teams have always been sort of ever evolving, ever changing. We're constantly learning more about ourselves. We're constantly adjusting. So that's kind of been my approach for many years now.
Coach, interesting enough, your first half schedule, which I realize you probably didn't have a lot of say in, if any at all, is a mix of some really good tests and some tests that were good maybe a few years ago, not so much now. Got out of the gate with a win over William Patterson and Gwinnett Mercy. Ithaca, a huge win over a Bomber squad that is usually pretty darn good. Misericordia has had some moments in the last few years. A ginormous win over Wartburg, who has been a pretty good top 25 team over the past few years. A win over Rhodes. George Fox, who's been a top 25 team, just isn't that this year. Big win over Tufts. And then a big win over Catholic to get back into conference play. And Catholic's certainly a very good team. It's almost weird. I'm trying to judge your team against names that I recognize, but I know they're not having the same seasons I'm used to, versus a Scranton program I've gotten very used to being very consistent and very good. So from your perspective, what is it about your team this year that we should understand? How good are you guys, or is it a little bit of misunderstanding because we can't read the leaves that well this year?
Well, I think it's hard to know really when we're only kind of at the beginning of our league season, kind of what all of these teams are going to look like in a month, 6 weeks from now. So a win that maybe looks okay right now, maybe will look really good in 6 weeks, and vice versa. So I don't get caught up in any of that stuff. It's more like, are we improving in the areas that we need to improve each game? Are we recognizing, okay, hey, we did this well, let's grow that area. We're still a little weak here. Let's continue to spend time here. So obviously we have a great game coming up with Elizabethtown. I think they come in undefeated and currently ranked the 18th in the country. So all we're focused on is just trying to be the best version of ourselves every time we take the court. And so that's been, I think, what we've been doing. I think we're getting better and better, and have gotten better and better as the season has worn on. And we're hoping that trend continues. Friday and Friday we have our best game. I think one of the things that's been a characteristic of this team, physical toughness, mental toughness. They've been in games where they have physically battled with other teams. Sometimes teams that were maybe bigger and stronger by appearance, and we've been in situations where we need to make big plays at big moments, and our team has done that as well. So they have really showed a tremendous amount of physical and mental toughness that I think has been a hallmark of our season so far.
And we should point out, maybe we should have renamed today's show from Conference Clashes to Defense Wins Championships, because every team we've talked to, it's been about the defense. 48.2 points allowed on average this season. One game with points over 60. we're used to defense being good from Scranton, but those are really impressive numbers, and you're limiting outside shooting, you're out rebounding opponents. Is that just the trademark Scranton? You've got players there who play hard-nosed defense, or is it a little bit of mix yourself?
Yeah, we certainly emphasize defense for sure. I don't know, when we got started here in practice, we were a few practices in before we talked ever about offense, so we certainly wanted to establish defense as an identity right from the beginning. Obviously, shooting comes and goes, even with the best shooting teams, but defense should and has shown up every night, and I think that's really, really important. I think if you look at all the teams that have been the sort of tops in the country over the course of many, many years, I mean, it's hard to find a team that doesn't defend at a really high level that's in that mix. So we understand that. We spend a lot of time on it. We emphasize it a lot, and we've got the players who are committed to playing it.
Pivoting, though, to the offensive end, Bridget Monahan, we all certainly know her very well, especially for those of us who are in the Landmark Conference. 15 points a game pretty much on average. She's the 31st player over 1,000 points, but you've got 3 more in double figures, starting with a freshman in Casey Cranston at 13 points a game, junior Maddie Ryan and Sam Raja, the grad student. You've got a lot of diversity there in terms of experience and whatnot. Ryan, by the way, hasn't taken a 3, which I think is just outstanding. You put her in the post and say, stay. This is where you live. But I know it's not just those 4, but it certainly starts with them. Give me a little bit of the dynamic between the experience of the Monahans and the Ryans and the whatnot versus the youth of the Cranstons.
Yeah, it starts with our senior leaders, and we have some great senior leaders, starting with Bridget Monahan, but then you have Hannah Angelini and Sarah Walsh and Akira Quigley, who was our returning starting center, but unfortunately had a knee injury literally in the first drill of the first practice. So she's missed a whole year, but she's been a tremendous emotional leader for us on the sideline. And then you have, as you mentioned, Sam Raja, who's a graduate transfer who brings a ton of experience, and then Emma Dewar, another transfer from last season, who's also a senior. So that core group has a lot of experience. They're also, in many ways, our hardest workers, so they set the tone for everyone else. So they've been terrific from that standpoint. In regards to kind of the spreading around of the ball, I think teams that are balanced and have multiple weapons on any given night, another player can step up. I think those teams are hardest to guard. I think we've had 6 different leading scorers this year. I think we've had 5 or 6 players at one point score over 20 points in a game. So as a defensive minded person, when I'm thinking about that and I'm going in and trying to scout that, and I see that they've got 6 guys capable of scoring over 20 in a given night, that's much harder to deal with than if you just have to focus on 1 or 2 kids. So we're fortunate that we have the players that are capable of doing that, but also we try to put those players in positions that on any one night it could be someone else, and I think that makes the game easier for everybody.
Interesting enough, conference race really heats up here. Your next opponent's E-Town. They're undefeated on top of the conference with you, undefeated in conference play. Susquehanna will game, and we'll talk about it in a moment, at the Palestra. And then Drew, who's undefeated, playing really well in conference play. And Moravian still to come. And then, of course, you're going to have to face off against everybody a second time. Give me a little sense of how you guys are preparing and how you're adjusting to understanding what the Landmark is in terms of women's basketball, which for the last few years has been a dogfight.
Yeah, it's that you hear it all the time from coaches, but just sort of a one game at a time mentality. So all we're focused on, 100% of our energy is focused on Elizabethtown tomorrow. So I've seen some of the other teams, obviously in the off season and in passing here or there while we're preparing for somebody else, but Susquehanna and Moravian and Juliana and those schools, we'll get to them when we're on to them. But right now it's just, last week it was just about Catholic, and tonight or this week it's just about Elizabethtown. So I know those other teams are having good seasons, but I don't know a ton about them right now.
You'll obviously take on Elizabethtown on Friday, which is a change because on Sunday you're headed to the Palestra. I'll let you know, Coach, this is not normal. I know it's in your first year. We don't play at the Palestra all that often. In fact, the Landmarks never played there at the Palestra. So welcome to the Palestra. Thanks for coming to the conference. Don't get used to it. But obviously it'll be a game against Susquehanna. You guys will be taking on there. What's it mean to the players for the opportunity to play at Penn? I know when the Centennial Conference did this a handful of years ago, there was a lot of excitement, and for most, not all, there were some who had no interest in doing it whatsoever. But from your team's perspective, what's it like, the idea to go down to the Palestra and play some big games in Philly in such an iconic setting?
Yeah, so a couple things. So first of all, so we're close enough to Philadelphia here that the people in this area understand the significance of the Palestra being, the oldest arena in the country and one of the most storied venues that you can possibly play. So for like people like me, basketball people in this area, it's a bucket list kind of place just to go see a game, let alone be able to coach in one or play in one. So it's a huge deal for us, and we're beyond thrilled to be able to go there. So we're looking forward to that very much. Also, Philadelphia has always been historically a very good recruiting area for us. It's some of the best players in Scranton history are from that Philadelphia area. So, and we have three terrific players, actually four terrific players, Kira being one of them who's not playing right now, but that are from the Philly area. So I know they're super psyched. Many of them had opportunities during high school to play at the Palestra, if they made it to their league championship game or some sort of big game. So their families and those players know the Palestra really, really well. So I know we'll have a lot of fans going down there, and those families in particular will be really well represented, because you've got aunts, neighbors, uncles all going to the Palestra game. So it's a really big deal for us on a variety of fronts. Again, it's an area that has a lot of great basketball talent that we love to recruit from. So it's also an opportunity for some people that, future Lady Royals can come maybe see us for the first time. So we're super excited about it.
Oh, that's going to be a lot of fun. I know my alma mater is playing its rival in Catholic in men's basketball there, so that'll be great for them as well. And too bad not everybody can be a part of it, but maybe in the years in the future they can figure it out. But that should be a great experience for all of you, and enjoy it. I let you go because I know you're busy, and I know you got things to focus on, like a game tomorrow, for example, and then the Palestra game on Sunday. We always have a tradition on this show, though, that we give the guests the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuned in?
Yeah, Dave, no, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. And just really excited about the game coming up tomorrow. I think it's going to be a great one. You mentioned earlier about, the fan support that we get here. It's one of those things that there's no professional sports in this town, but this is a sports crazy town. So in a lot of ways, the University of Scranton is the pro team here, so we're expecting a really fun, exciting environment tomorrow. One where, the players put in so much hard work, and it's games like this and atmospheres like this that they do it for, so just thankful to be on the show. Obviously very thankful to be here at the University of Scranton, and go Royals.
Well, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. Good luck down the road. Hopefully I'll run into you at some point, and enjoy the rest of the season. I'm sure we'll be talking about the Royals quite a bit as we get to the end of February. So we'll look forward to having you back on at some point down the road.
Thanks, Dave. It was a pleasure.
Ben O'Brien joining us on the Blue Frame Technology Hoopsville Hotline. Appreciate him taking the time. We're taking another break. When we come back, wrap up the show. A couple of the NCAA convention items we wanted to talk about we haven't gotten to. We'll get to those here coming up. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA and ABC studios. Back with more after this.
These are your teams, your players, your community of fans. This is where they play, where they practice, where you cheer. At every meet, every event, every game. Your community is passionate, dedicated, supportive. You know the tension of a close game and the thrill of the win. So while you're cheering, keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary. If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
It starts right when you hit the court. You imagine your finest moment. The game-winning shot that gets you to the dance. A monster dunk or no-look pass, and cutting down the net. Sports lets us dream of our own success and prepare us for our finest moments on and off the court.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at d3hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
In any way that we can.
To get a friend home safe.
To never blame the victim.
It's on us.
To stand up.
To make our community safe for all. It's on us.
It's on us to look out for each other at parties.
It's on us.
To be more than just a bystander.
To step up and say something.
It's on us. All of us.
To stop sexual assault. Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Oh, sorry, folks. Checking out messages on the old Twitters. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Dave McHugh. Again, sorry for the audio difficulties we had during the Puget Sound interview. Hopefully the podcast will make it sound a little bit better. Not great, but better. And we'll move forward. Somehow we made one little change and didn't realize the ramifications of those changes. If you've got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. You can write us, or you can email us, hoopsville at d3sports.com. Scroll at the bottom of your screen. We're also simulcasting on Facebook at facebook.com/hoopsville and on YouTube. So thanks of all of you who are joining us there. Certainly appreciate it. Want to talk quickly about the NCAA convention going on now. It's officially underway in San Antonio. Division III, voting on a number of things that are basically direct ramifications of changing the Constitution at the last convention by the entirety of the NCAA. A lot of things will make headlines will come out of Division I, but Division III has a number of things that they're voting on that will have a ramification based on that. And we should understand that these conventions are a lot of times where the amount of legislation or what will be voted on for the next convention come out of. There's a lot of conversations. For example, the CSAC and the United East Conference are definitely having meetings today, or not today, but in general. I don't know what the exact schedule is because I forgot to look it up, but there's meetings amongst those individuals about getting that merger put together for next academic year. There's other schools and conferences that are having conversations. For example, Eastern Nazarene will be moving to the NAC. By the way, they'll be on the west side for 1 year to fill in for Casanova before officially being on the east side of that conference. We forgot to mention that last show. But, you know, they have meetings with their new conference mates coming up. And then there's always this happens, and this is why sometimes we end up breaking news around this time. For example, last year, the Landmark Conference was talking about adding football, something we knew for several months before, or at least had heard scuttlebutt for several months, but I had it pretty much on lock for about 6 to 8 weeks before they announced it. This is the type of occasion where they have those meetings that prolong those things forward. Point being, here are some of the items that Division III is talking about. First of all, we talked about the special rule for voting. There's 2 sets of legislation, or I should say 2 groups of legislation that will get this special voting. We mentioned on the show Monday that they would on Friday make a decision on which one was going to go first. I need to circle back on that because the way the wording reads for this special rule, it says something a little bit differently than that. It says when the proposals are presented to the delegates, and this is for the first one, and this is dealing with something else we'll talk about, but this is proposals 7 and 8. I believe, again, the playing dates one is 10 and 11. But for 7 and 8, it says, the proposals are presented to the delegates for consideration during the Division III business session on Saturday, January 14. The delegates may discuss the merits of both proposals when the discussion is complete. The delegates will vote on which proposal they prefer to be considered first. That vote will determine the order of the proposals. So normally it's whatever order the proposals are in. So 7 would be voted on first, then 8 would be voted on. There's been a number of times when there's been different legislation up that a lot of times people are like, well, I don't know how I'm going to vote on B because I want to see how A goes. Or I'm not sure how I want to vote on A because I really wanted to know how B was going to go. And can't tell you how many times A gets approved. B is just a walk in the park on approval. That if A had been dismissed, B would have been an interesting conversation. So this is an example of where they want to make sure one of the proposals of the two presented in these two different scenarios is got a fair chance at knocking off the status quo. I thought that was taking place on Friday. From what I'm reading here, it may be taking place actually on Saturday, which makes a little bit more sense, to be honest with you. But neither here nor there. The first one has to do with 7 and 8. We'll jump ahead to that. 7 has to do with, and it's called Division III President Council, Management Council. That's where it came from. Required geographic and conference representation. Number 8 is from the same groups. Amend composition representation. Student athletes do not satisfy in conference representation requirements. So this is, I'm sorry, that's 8 and 8-1. I apologize. 7 is 4-year alternating conference-based representation. It's again this scenario where you've got two different perspectives on the same thing. They want to get a basis on the new constitution, new bylaws, that the multiple sport conferences, which are the 40 some odd that exist out there who are conferences for multiple sport, have a better representation on all of the significant councils. So in quote, each Division III multi-sport conference will have one representative on either president's or management council, and that the conference's slot will either alternate will alternate accordingly, meaning not one on both, one on either, which does expand the president and management council, I believe. It goes on to say if a conference is unable to secure nominees for either council, its slot will go unfulfilled unless the council is smaller than 18 members, in which an at-large selection will be made. And again, we're talking about larger groups. So that's the first one. That's 7. 8 reads a little bit differently, but is basically the same thing. Sorry, I misclicked. I'm trying to get back to 8. 8 requires to adjust the composition of the President's Council and Management Council to provide representation from each multi-sport conference on either of them. They're saying the same thing from different perspectives, saying the same things from different ideas. So basically, they need to decide, do we want 8 to go first to knock off the status quo, or do we want 7 to go first to knock off the status quo? And then there's 8-1, which is about resolving the student-athlete equation on this, because their representation is not what they want it to be. 8-1 basically reads to amend the proposal to establish that student-athletes on the councils do not satisfy the conference representation requirements. It's a little bit inside baseball, I realize. But my point is, this is happening on a couple of them. And the other is playing dates. We talked about it. There's the governance structured one, which means 114 days instead of weeks. But there's certain guidelines and a roadmap for it. You can, for example, in basketball, only use 8 of your days anywhere before October 15th, however you want to use them. In the other structure, it use as many as you want. You just have to find a way to then remove them from your season somewhere else. So do you go without guidelines or do you go with guidelines is basically where it is. This one, it's a little bit different than that, but basically the idea is, how do you want it structured? Do you want it more structured in how we do this, or do you want it a little looser based? And which one goes first? Which one gets voted on? So those are the two big ones to keep an eye on. One other one that caught my eye, they're voting on whether to take mental health hardship waiver out of the regular hardship waiver. It's part of the general one when it comes to physical injuries and stuff. In other words, get a red shirt or an injury year. They want to put mental health as a separate one. I think that's a great idea, and encourage that one. I'm sure that will pass. There's another one, student advisor, the SAC, the Student Athletic Advisory Council, voting privileges, basically to give them a vote at the business session, which is that Saturday thing. Right now, the SAC will get up and present what they feel is how they want to vote. They always have the right to have that moment to speak on what they want to vote on or approve. Let's say they're against 7, but they're for 8. They may get up and say, we're for 7, but we're against 8. We're against 7, we're for 8. They can get up and speak on that, but they have no vote. This is to allow that SAC, which Division III has always felt is important and has always had a student involved. They want to give them a vote, just like a membership would have a vote, just like a conference would have a vote. Let's give SAC a vote. I think it's a good idea, and I'm hopefully that will pass as well. Some other things, amend the committees as well to adjust the composition of designated governments committees to provide consistent in size and regional representation, and a student athlete voice on governance committees where such representation is currently not present. So in other words, make sure that the numbers in strategic planning and finance, championships, financial aid, interpretations and legislation, membership and nominating are all the same size, and that student athletes are added to any that don't have one on their committee already. There's a nominating committee, do some of the same thing. Basically, sure, the nominating committee includes one member from each of the 10 regions, so that'll increase the nominating committee just a wee bit to hopefully provide more nominations and interest from across the board, as it were. That's another thing they're considering talking about. Getting rid, by the way, this is a D2 kind of rule. They want to, one of the other things they're discussing is having the requirement that if you are entering Division III, you have an invitation from a conference. And this is for the likes of the Bob Joneses of the world who have entered Division III with no conference membership and are now just out there. Bob Jones still does not have a conference tie for most of their sports. They are certainly not a full-time member of a conference. It is a bit problematic, and they want to get rid of that. So they're taking the Division II rule, if you might remember, in the Division I rule, that you cannot even enter, you cannot even apply to be a part of the member unless you have basically an invite from a conference to join them. In other words, their endorsement. Let's see, the playing and practice season, we talked about the 114s there. There's a talk about changing the fall preseason practice formula, moving it from, and this is not football, but moving it from 16-day count back to an 18-day count back. There's another one about establishing stunt as an emerging sport for women. This one's interesting because there's two different groups. There's a stunt group and there's the acrobatics group, and as I understand it, they're basically the same thing with a little bit differences between the two. And I think this came up last year and got voted down. I don't remember specifically, but I remember it being up in conversation. I heard many say, no, we're going to vote against it because we have the other one. And we don't want to establish stunt when we have the other one. We want to pivot. We don't think this should be a one-thing type thing. So we'll see where that goes. There's allowing public communication on social media after January 1 of a senior year. And there's about eliminating something about self-study. So there's a lot of this that's based out of the change to the Constitution. Not surprisingly that they're voting on. A little bit of it's in the minutia and a little bit inside baseball, but they're important for the Division III and how the division moves forward. Conference representation and membership representation and voting decisions. And then there's the big one in our world of the 114 days. So we'll see how that all plays out. There's a conversation to be had on Friday. That's Friday morning. They have a long conversation, straw polls and all of that. Saturday morning's the biggest vote. We'll try and pay attention Saturday morning to what's going on. I really wish the business session was live streamed. I'm actually a little frustrated it's not. It's something I've had long conversations with people about. For some reason, people don't like the idea to have it live streamed, which I think is just kind of hokey. They have all the equipment there. They have cameras and stuff there so that can be put on the big screens. It should be live streamed for anybody at home who wants to watch what's going on. You still have to be in attendance for it to, and I think, by the way, old live streams were available because of the hybrid formula. We'll see if it's live streamed this year. I'm speaking as if it's not. Maybe it is live streamed. But my point being is, I hope that's a standard, because then we all can sit at home and enjoy, for those of us who want to, watching how this progresses, listening to the arguments. It should be an open process outside, not just in that room, but throughout the country, so we can tune in and learn more about how the division is progressing. So anyway, and like I said, tomorrow's meeting, that's where a lot of the legislation for next year will come about. Big games again this weekend, big games moving forward. We are in the midst of conference schedules. This is when it's all exciting, as the last few nights certainly proved. Be sure to go to d3hoops.com. We've got schedules and links. If you're an SID, by the way, who has not updated your schedules or your links, live stats, live video, whatever on d3hoops.com, please do so. It is a huge help. There's some inside baseball as to why we have more schools to fill in than we're used to. We can talk about that some other day, but please help us out. We're a volunteer group, and those links end up helping you because people come to our website to see what games are being played. And if you're there updating our site, and it takes all of a couple of minutes to do so, you get all the attention. So please consider that and help us out if you can. There you go. There's my spiel. Let's see. Zach says, I thought one to require a conference invitation as part of the membership application was interesting. Yeah, I think it's interesting, Zach, and I think it's needed. For a long time, I didn't think it was needed because I think we figured those things out. But now I think it's interesting. Hartford coming to the division didn't have a playing partner when it applied. They resolved it, though, like most do, before they actually enter the phrase, or they do it during that little 3-year window now that we used to be 4. Some other schools that have entered, Asbury and some others, have found conference homes and made it work. But there's still a handful. And Bob Jones is the easiest one for me to point to, though there's one in the Philadelphia area as well, who don't have a home yet. And I think Division III has gotten to a point where it's like, listen, first off, the reason the conference is helpful is because they can help you with that transition. The conference as a whole will help you as a transition. You have members you can lean on. You've got the conference office you can lean on. So that transition is very helpful. Second, it doesn't leave these schools kind of floundering in Division III with no home for their teams, which puts a bit of a burden on the rest of the division. And anyway, there's lots of other things we could talk about. So I kind of endorse it. I like it. I have no problems with it. Division III is becoming more and more popular. We'll see how many have applied to come to the division. We know we're probably losing Nichols and Utica this year. This is, by the way, about when Utica and Nichols would officially be talking to Division II and putting in their applications, which are due sometime next month. So this is about when that would officially be taking place as well. Well, that's the other way around too. Some have to get their applications into Division III this month to apply. Usually it's first 4 are accepted unless one of them isn't. Then anybody outside of the 4 can come in. By the way, Maine Fort Kent, the only reason they did not enter the portal to enter Division III was they were the 5th the 5th school to apply. Anyway, I digress. So lots of interesting things we'll keep an eye on there. Looking forward to all of that. And with that, we're going to wrap things up because I'm a little late here and I got to get to basketball. I got a son who's studying. I need to help him out a little bit and some other things. Again, we'll be on the air Monday at 7 o'clock Eastern time. We'll get one or maybe both top 25 panels on the show, plus some other interviews. I know we got some lot to talk about and catch up on in the time that we didn't have shows. And so we're still running a little bit behind, but we'll do our best to catch up. And we got a lot of pet projects that we want to get on the air, some back burner items we want to discuss. We can also discuss anything that happened at the NCAA convention on Monday, especially if there's anything significant that developed from all of that. I want to thank all of our guests from Puget Sound. Of course, Casey Kushiyama, sorry, I had to think that through for a second, even though it's written right in front of me, for coming on the show. Mike Fuline from Mount Union, of course, Coach Medina from St. Thomas, and Ben O'Brien from Scranton, for all of them coming on, and thank their sports information departments for their assistance with everything we needed to get those segments put together, especially for a midday Thursday show. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. Really appreciate you taking the time to be a part of our family and be a part of our show. Interesting. The two chairs have met up at the convention. I just saw this. Megan Wilson tweeting out that she and Sarah Quattrocki at the NCAA convention talked some D3 hoops, wondering when our invite's coming to the first D3 Hoopsville chat. We were going to have, oh man, great to see those two together. We were going to have them on in early December when we had to take a pause. So we're working on when we're getting them on. We will talk to them. We've got some cool plans with them ahead as well. I'm looking forward to having Megan and Sarah on the show. The fact that those are the two chairs, they are dynamite women, and I think it's awesome that we have them on. I'm jealous they're in San Antonio. I've gone to San Antonio for the convention, and I'm really wishing I could be there with them right now. That'd been awesome. It'd been great to talk D3 hoops with them. Great to see that. Thank you, Megan, for that tweet. Just came out a minute ago, and I'm glad I saw it before the show went off the air. We will be connecting with them shortly. We always get them on at the marathon. I don't know if I want to wait that long. It's a long story. I think we might do it a little bit sooner than that. We have our reasons. Trust me, we've got some big news coming that I'm really excited about. So we'll get in touch with Megan and Sarah here real shortly. Maybe after they've enjoyed San Antonio for some time. Maybe they should have been listening to the show tonight, right? This afternoon, I mean. We'll turn around the podcast. For anybody who enjoys the podcast, those of you tuned into that, thanks so much. And tell your friends about the show, please, folks. If you want to talk Division III, you got to talk about Hoopsville, right? You got to listen to the show. Please, ask your friends to tune in. Tell them this is where you got to be. This is where everyone wants to tune in, and we hope and really hope to keep this thing moving along. And again, as we said earlier, if you want to sponsor, advertise, invest, be a partner of this show, or donate in some way, please get in touch with us. We're going to put something formal together for those of you. We've had enough of you ask about donating to the program. We'll put something together here soon. But at the top of our Twitter account, by the way, there is a option to donate via there. It's a little thing that looks like a little cash button. Believe it or not, you can donate through that. So please feel free to do so. And those of you who have donated so far, thank you so very, very much. And with that, we wrap things up. You've been listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA and ABC studios. Thanks to our partners at the Women's Basketball Coaches Association, the National Association of Basketball Coaches, D3Hoops.com, Blue Frame Technology as well, and Huddle for their support. We don't have a formal partnership with Blue Frame this season, but they've been helping us out on the side, and we appreciate that. Hoping to maybe put one together here in the near future as well. And with that, we say adieu. Enjoy the basketball on these next few days, including those of you in the Landmark Conference getting to see games at the Palestra. In the meantime, we'll catch all of you back here on Monday. Take care, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the week.